We are live. How's everybody doing? My name is Alan Roberts. Thank you for joining me. And if you're watching this on replay, thank you for watching it on replay. I really appreciate it. I am about to do a video that I think is very important in our society. I think there are a lot of people out there that have not seen this video and are not putting things together. And this might give them, I don't know, like a new perspective on things. Now, I am going to have to stop this video fairly often just to avoid a YouTube strike. But I highly encourage everybody to watch the entire series of videos. We are going to watch today. Hang on, let me get the full name. We're going to watch the Event 201 Pandemic Exercise Segment 4 Communications Discussions and Epilogue video. This is from Johns Hopkins University, and I might as well put it up on screen here right now. This is from Johns Hopkins University, as you can see. And it is just so everybody can see this right here. This was uploaded onto Johns Hopkins Center on November 4th of 2019. This was from October 18th of 2019. So in October 18th of 2019, Event 201 is a pandemic tabletop exercise hosted by the Johns Hopkins Center for Health Security in partnership with the World Economic Forum and the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and it happened on October 18th, 2019 in New York City. So, first of all, the mid-October date is kind of interesting to me, right? Because the mid-October date, I could easily make the argument, and I would love to debate this with anybody, that COVID was in the United States being transferred around in October, probably mid-October when this was going on, of 2019. They have verified antibody samples that were taken in December 13th, I believe was the earliest one, in 2019. So first of all, that blows the timeline out of the water already, because that means it wasn't in the United States in January. It was at least late November, because the way it works is you get COVID, then the antibodies form 1 to 3 weeks later. So this means that if they found it December 13th, it's likely that late November was when those dozens of people, it was dozens of samples that were shown to have the antibodies for COVID, dozens, from states thousands of miles apart, Pennsylvania, California, and I think another one, like thousands of miles apart, dozens in each state. So just by geographic spread and by how many people there were, these were not the first sets of people, obviously, since there was dozens in multiple states, thousands of miles apart. That means that these people caught it from other people who caught it from other people. So October, 4 weeks earlier than what it likely was, but just by the antibody samples, when you postulate out the time it takes for antibodies to get in, and then who gave these people that virus, back that up, that's another 6 weeks or so, or 4 weeks or so. So now we're in mid-October. COVID-19 was circulating in the United States in mid-October, and I will debate it with anybody. Anybody. So that blows the timeline out of the water. That also blows out the whole, it's a world-killing virus immediately, because it went unchecked and even unnoticed to a certain degree in the United States for the entire winter, or like late fall, early winter through 2020. So the first wave went unnoticed and untreated. The first wave of a novel virus is the most deadly wave, because the least amount of people have immunity. So we need to really rethink this, because it obviously wasn't the world-killing virus that we thought, and the timeline is very off. The timeline is easily debunked. 100% easily debunked. And I'm going to do a video on that later at a different time too. But let's get to this, because this is, again, a long one. We are going to play it at 1.25 speed. And I'm going to have to stop it fairly often because, again, I don't want to get in trouble. But one more time, just so everybody sees, everybody can see that I'm not bullshitting. This is from November 4th, 2019. November 4th of 2019 was when this was published, not filmed, published. So here we go.
Okay, we will now advance 3 weeks to the fourth and final meeting of the...
And by the way, this is, they're running a simulation. So they're simulating all of these speeches. They've written them down, and they're just presenting a plan of how they're going to handle a pandemic for some reason. Just for some reason.
Pandemic Emergency Board on December 18th, 2019.
Okay, thank you for reconvening, and let's get an update from Dr. Rivers.
In the last 3 weeks, case numbers have continued to grow exponentially. We now have an estimated 4.2 million cases and 240,000 deaths.
Tell me that this doesn't look like a news briefing from, March of 2020. Tell me it doesn't.
Almost every country is now reporting cases, and those who aren't may simply not have the resources to conduct surveillance. We don't see any change in the rate of rapid spread, and models estimate that we could have more than
a rapid spread virus
than 12 million cases and close to 1 million deaths by mid-January. We're not sure how big.
And that was very similar to the model from the Imperial College of London by, I can't remember his name, but dude that did the model has historically been known for fucking shit up. And he literally said basically like 2.4 million Americans were going to die in like the first 5 months. Remember, it was supposedly like going to absolutely decimate us. It turned out to be nothing like that, but he estimated like 2.4 million people in America would die, and pretty much got the entire world scared. And then while he was living in London, he was breaking all their mandates and all their curfews and all their COVID restrictions to go bang his mistress. So just putting that out there.
Big this could get, but there's no end in sight. Financial markets are universally down by 15% or more on the year.
So they knew, by the way, they knew panicking everybody over cold was going to destroy the markets. They knew this. I would argue we should have looked at see who was shorting companies in, like, especially restaurant businesses and shit like that. We should see who was shorting them because they made a lot of fucking money. And then the people, obviously, once the market crashed, were able to reinvest because they had the capital to reinvest. Like, this plan helps them know what to invest in. So, this plan is not a plan on how to be prepared for a pandemic. It's how to take control during a pandemic.
Fear of a catastrophic pandemic and uncertainty about the capacity for governments to respond and remain viable are fueling investor uncertainty.
We have called this meeting today because of major strategic problems around communication that are happening globally. And here's a media debate that just happened on air today.
They even produced fake news segments. Like, that's how serious these people were about making sure that they could plan to take over the world.
Alarming news emerging from social media companies today about the CAPS pandemic. Twitter and Facebook
CAPS pandemic
are reporting they've identified and deleted a disturbing number of accounts dedicated to spreading disinformation about the outbreak. For more,
so how does that sound familiar? Like Facebook and Twitter, like it's like they already knew that they would be able to get Facebook and Twitter to delete the words of free fucking Americans. Sounds to me like it sounds to me like they planned on that already. Huh. That's kind of crazy. That's kind of wild. It's also kind of wild how all the stuff that was labeled disinformation and misinformation in the very beginning of the pandemic all turned out to be true also.
on this, we go to our correspondent, Catalina Parks.
Chen, these accounts were created by several state-sponsored groups intending to sow political discord, and some individuals are seemingly seeking to gain financial advantages. Violence against healthcare workers and minority populations has been increasing. A recent riot highlights the real danger in these posts. Countries are reacting in different ways as to how best to manage the overwhelming amounts of dis and misinformation circulating over
the overwhelming amounts of your opinions. The overwhelming amounts of the opinions you're allowed to have. That if your opinion was so wrong, they would be able to be easily explained away by a conversation from public health or from the government. Like, instead of just labeling you as disinformation or misinformation or medical misinformation or something like that, why would they not make themselves clearer? Like, because this has always been my argument. If I can even get you to debate with me that COVID was just a cold and you have a hard time with it, it was not deadly. you would not be able, if there was an actual world-killing virus that was spreading around, you would not need to be having to convince people. People would, if they really thought they were in danger, they would absolutely just stay in, as historically we've done. It's crazy.
The internet. In some cases, limited internet shutdowns are being implemented to quell panic.
Thank you, Catalina. For more on this, we are joined by experts on crisis communications and social media, Kevin McAleese and Sarah Lee.
To me, it is clear countries need to make strong efforts to manage both mis- and disinformation. We know social media companies are working around the clock to combat these disinformation campaigns. The task of identifying every bad actor.
So they're making it so they can paint anybody that they say has disinformation as not just wrong, but kind of evil, like kind of like, hey, they're the enemy type thing. Like, if the American public is unclear about something, it is the government's job to make sure that they're clear. Just like, and I've always pointed this out too, just so everybody understands. Say you go to the doctor, and the doctor tells you to take a medication, and you say why. That doctor should be able to tell you exactly why in language that you understand. And if they can't, then that's not informed consent. Like, if you don't understand the treatment being given to you, you don't have informed consent. If you don't know the possible side effects, if you don't know the long-term plan, if the doctor can't tell you how long you're going to need to be on this medication, if he's like, I don't know, or she's like, I don't know, then I got a newsflash for you. That's malpractice. Like, your doctor should be able to explain to you in language that you understand everything about the procedures, your health that's going on. If they cannot, you do not have informed consent, and they should not treat you because you do not have informed. They've made it so you don't understand what they would be doing to you. That is not consent.
Is immense. And experts agree that new disinformation campaigns are being generated every day. This is a huge problem that's
Experts agree, do they?
going to keep us from ending the pandemic and might even lead to the fall of governments, as we saw in the Arab Spring.
Yes, absolutely. People saying that COVID came from the Wuhan coronavirus lab when the first case that they're even trying to tell you was about in Wuhan, which, by the way, is very weird because one more time, as I displayed at the beginning of this, and it's easily fact checkable, that antibody samples were found, dozens of them in over 100 of them, dozens and dozens of them in states thousands of miles apart in the United States in December of 2019, early December of 2019, which means it was likely here in mid-October of 2019. So, I mean, come on, if something's off, we need to have these conversations. It's one of the reasons why I'm doing this video today, but they're just laying out how they are trying to make sure that they can squash dissent is basically what this is.
Solution means controlling and reducing access to information. I think
controlling and reducing access to information. I think that's the right choice. This is no shit. Listen to this.
Is immense. And experts agree that new disinformation campaigns are being generated every day. This is a huge problem that's going to keep us from ending the pandemic and might even lead to the fall of governments, as we saw in the Arab Spring. If the solution means controlling and reducing access to information, I think it's the right choice.
I agree with Kevin. This is a
Shocking. She agrees with Kevin. We should silence people.
big problem and doesn't even account
It's wild that the World Economic Forum Bill and Melinda Gates would, be okay with silencing people.
for the massive amounts of misinformation being generated by legitimate users about the pandemic. But it's not just trolls who are spreading the fake news. It's often political leaders themselves. Who's to judge what's real or not? Would we trust every government to separate truth from lies?
I think this is more than just keeping the bad information out. It's also about making sure real public health information reaches the public.
Real public health information, because this way they can label anything that's not the narrative false. This is how they're planning to do this. This is them saying we are going to pick a narrative and stick with it and label anything else as dissent and evil.
News is found from outlets other than social media. News organizations, public health groups, and companies need to help people take the right actions to protect themselves by promoting accurate, real information about the outbreak.
Okay, for more on this, we're going to get a briefing from our communications expert, Dr. Sell.
Global health experts have highlighted that dis and misinformation are wreaking havoc on the CAP's response. Health workers are under attack in a number of locations due to rumors that they are purposely spreading the disease. And response efforts in many places have had to be suspended
See, they combated that with dancing nurses on TikTok.
because of concerns around violence. Pharmaceutical companies are
But that also does make it so we like, remember how they were saying, the heroes and everything like that. And don't get me wrong, doctors and nurses that showed up during a pandemic, you guys worked fucking hard, but you just did your motherfucking jobs. And very frankly, COVID was a cold anyway. And if you didn't know that, why the fuck are you a doctor?
are being accused of introducing the CAPS virus so they can make money on drugs and vaccines, and have seen public faith in their
hear
products
that?
plummet.
You hear that?
Response efforts in many places have had to be suspended because of concerns around violence. Pharmaceutical companies are being accused of introducing the CAPS virus so they can make money on drugs and vaccines.
Huh. Shh. What? Are they telling us?
And have seen public faith in their products plummet. Unrest due to false rumors and divisive messaging is rising and is exacerbating spread of the disease as levels of trust fall and people stop cooperating with response efforts. This is a massive problem, one that threatens governments and trusted institutions. Polls have shown that mis and disinformation are ubiquitous. At least 90% of the public has been exposed to these messages. At the same time, misinformation messages come from a variety of sources, even government officials. And often governments are contradicting one another. We know that social media is now the primary way that many people get their news. So interruptions to these platforms could curb the spread of misinformation, but could also limit access to information from legitimate sources. Health ministries around the world are attempting to combat mis and disinformation by amplifying public health
Crazy.
messaging through social and traditional media. But they are being outpaced by false and misleading information. National governments are considering or have already implemented a range of interventions to combat misinformation. Some governments have taken control of national access to the internet. Others are censoring websites and social media content. And a small number have shut down internet access completely to prevent the spread of misinformation. Penalties have been put in place for spreading harmful falsehoods, including arrests. Other countries have taken a more moderate approach and have focused on promoting fact-checking efforts and working with traditional media
Fact-checking.
outlets. Yet these approaches are limited in scope.
And all of a sudden,
Social media
the idea of fact checking bursts into reality. Like, remember when that first started happening? Like, that didn't happen. That did not happen before the pandemic. There was no fact check. Isn't it amazing? Like, that's where that came from. Fact check.
media companies report that they're doing all they can to limit the use of their platforms for nefarious or misleading purposes. But this is a technically difficult problem, and false, misleading, or half-true information is difficult to sort without limiting potentially true messages. The bottom line is that members of the public no
Without limiting potentially true messages. So they're like, we don't give a shit if you're true or not. We're going to silence you.
longer know who to trust. Both the misinformation and the measures to control it have led to a crisis of confidence.
Thank you, Dr. Sell. So here's the policy crisis for this meeting of the board. How can governments, international businesses, international organizations ensure that reliable information is getting to the public and prevent highly damaging and false information to the extent that's possible about the pandemic from spreading and causing deepening crisis around the world? How much control of information should there be, and by whom? And how can false information be effectively challenged? And what if that false information is coming from companies or from governments? So your views are welcome.
So I would start by pursuing where trust exists in the ecosystem. Jane, in a prior meeting, mentioned that there's considerable trust by employees of their employer, and that's been borne out by our own trust barometer in the last several years, where it's extraordinary the amount of trust given to the employer. And coupled with that, in times of crisis, as we're living, the role of the CEO and the trust given to the CEO for advocacy and for advancement of accurate information is considerable. I would marry the business leadership of the employer with business leadership organizations, such as.
So they're going to side with the businesses, the big businesses, over the people. That's the plan. Kind of like how Walmart was able to stay open, but the local hardware store that had been known by the same family for 80 years had to close their doors forever. But Walmart was good, right? Like how the local sandwich shop had to close down, but fast food chains, done. Like the measures that they made restaurant owners jump through, the things that they made them leap through, that they had the extra money to purchase, plus like limited their seating, everything like that. But meanwhile, fast food's still good to go. Like, we need to wrap our heads around that this was planned and done, and Trump failed in preventing it from happening to us. Like, everybody needs to grasp that, right? Like, this isn't a big, I hate Donald Trump thing, but reality is reality. He did great for his first 3 years in his first term, and then shit the bed in 2020 when he handed over the keys to the country and our Constitution to Fauci. And I know people are gonna be like, well, he didn't want to get impeached or kicked out of office or anything like that. He should have been willing to. For real. To do the right thing, to make it so we kept our freedom, he should have been willing to. I'm just saying that right now. Donald Trump let us all down in 2020. Under Donald Trump, and I voted for him in 2024, by the way, just in case any of you are wondering, because the alternative was insanity, and that wasn't it. And I did like Trump's economic policy, and honestly, up until now, I really appreciated the No New Wars thing. So try to hold on to that one too, there, Trumpy. But I voted for him because I'm not a stupid person. However, to look past his failures is dooming us to just put him up as an idol instead of using him as the tool we need to use him for to make sure shit like what happened in 2020 can never happen to us again. Right? So that's where I'm at with that. But under Trump, people were labeled as essential and non-essential. Now, I'm not saying Trump did that. I'm saying that Trump lost control and that it was done to us. And he was supposed to stop that from happening to us. That's all I'm saying about that. But I will say that under Trump's watch, citizens were silenced, censored. Their First Amendment rights were trashed, stolen from them. And people were labeled as essential and non-essential. Like, that's unacceptable. It should never happen again. They literally planned to do it, and they did it.
Just the BRT and like enterprises around the globe. But I also think we're at a moment where the social media platforms have to step forward and recognize the moment to assert that they're a technology platform and not a broadcaster is over. They, in fact, have to be a participant in broadcasting accurate information and partnering with the scientific and health communities to.
So in other words, they're saying that the social media entities and the mainstream media needed to take a stance behind them, making it so they are no longer media, so making it so they are propaganda. No matter how you want to look at it, like it's propaganda.
Counterweight, if not flood the zone of accurate information, because to try to put the genie back in the bottle of the misinformation and disinformation is nigh impossible.
So flood good information. Okay, others, yeah, Jane.
Yeah, so can I agree with that? And my fact, it did come from the Edelman Trust Index, you'll be pleased to know, but also borne out by the work I've done as a CEO in my time. Can I also add that I think there are real technology opportunities here. I personally do not believe that trying to shut things down in terms of information is either practical or desirable. And we do have, I think, a couple of strategies that are available to us, one of which is the flood strategy, second of which is relying and informing and equipping trusted sources of information with the facts so they can then pass that on. But we also need to actually think about a technological answer to this. So there is work that's being done to actually create algorithms to sift through information on these kind of social media platforms.
So anybody wonder how, like, immediately, and I'm talking immediately, in like March 13th, March 15th of 2020, how if you put something in negative about COVID or anything like that, or in any way saying like, I don't care, it's a cold, or, blah, 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 anything like that, immediately, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, they would take your post down. Like, these social media companies can't stop child porn. But if you mentioned that you didn't want to take the vaccine, they would put you in jail for 90 days. Like, they can't stop people purchasing and selling children on their platforms, but they can create an algorithm that will silence you immediately should you say something that is wrong speak in their determination. Like, get there faster, people. Like, I mean, that's one of my catchphrases, but I really mean it. Like, you guys got to get there faster. Like, so many of you should be so mad. So mad. So many of you bought into this so hard that you made it your entire personality pretty much. Like a lot of you stopped seeing family members because they wouldn't take an experimental therapy produced by historically corrupt companies in a historically corrupt industry that had full liability protection, that didn't stop transmission and didn't stop infection, that had no long-term safety data at all, and the companies had full liability protection produced in a fraction of the time normally needed over a cold. Right? It turned out it's a cold. The infection fatality rate of COVID-19 on the World Health Organization is listed at 0.05 for people under 70. The original strain. That's seasonal flu cold area. Stop it. Stop it. Stop it. Like, get there faster. You can't remain totally ignorant your entire life. They lied to you. You bought it. You're stupid. Get over it. Smarten up. Get there faster.
And I know that the Gates Foundation and others are funding organizations to work on things like this in order that people can.
Yeah, Bill Gates is working on the algorithms to silence you. They literally said it.
And actually have more confidence in the sources that they will use in any event. So I think both a detailed solution working with individuals, but then also thinking about technology is something we have to advance.
Asti.
So looping back into the trust barometer, last year in Davos, it was released that trust in traditional media sources has grown while trust in social media sources has gone down, specifically after the last elections in the United States. So I think one of the ways that we need to approach this is to make sure that we have the right representatives on traditional media networks in order to portray our side of the story.
The right representatives to portray our side of the story. Let's hear that one more time.
Social media sources has gone down, specifically after the last elections in the United States. So I think one of the ways that we need to approach this is to make sure that we have the right representatives on traditional media networks in order to portray our side of the story and make sure that there isn't misinformation. I agree with Jane that shutting down internet is only going to cause extra panic and extra anxiety. In fact, that staff tells me places where internet access has been shut down, there's unrest growing. So we're not only dealing with this specific situation, but really people not trusting their governments at this point. And so I think we really need to make sure, one, from a news perspective, that information is being disseminated correctly and that we have the right resources out there to provide this information. I also think that there is a good point in trusting in employees.
And by the way, just for the record, I don't think these people are necessarily evil. I think they were hired to do something. They might be. They might have been involved in the planning of this, but come on. Come on.
Your employers. There are lots of communications channel. For example, during the Ebola crisis at Texas Children's Hospital, we had daily briefings with the CDC to tell us what the situation was.
Remember the daily briefings from Chris Cuomo and from all the other governors and everything like that? And Chris Cuomo would get out there he would be like standing there acting like he literally just got done fighting like a forest fire or boxing 12 rounds. Like, well, today we unfortunately lost X amount of souls, and we need the ventilators and trumpet. Like, shut the fuck up. What's going to happen now?
And because of the daily briefings we used between the intranet, internal global communications, and town halls, we use those sources to be able to disseminate information and make sure that our employees knew exactly what was going on, coming straight from the source, whether it was from our CEO, our chief nursing officer, others within the hospital.
Okay, yeah, Chris, sorry.
No, I think a complementary tactic too is to tap faith-based organizations and civil society and other institutions to recruit them also to basically, almost at a grassroots level, continue to basically have the integrity of the information.
So I just pick up on the daily briefings or twice daily briefings during H1N1. WHO filled the parking lot in Geneva with the global press and provided them daily updates on what was happening. And I think that's a manifestation of flood, meaning you have to lead and lead regularly. And I think in the terms of the content is what we know and point to where communications have actually been pretty good. I think we projected the exponential increase in this quite well, and therefore there's legitimacy to what's being communicated. And so be clear about what's being communicated that we know and that is right, but also be very clear about communicating what is absolutely wrong, and being clear about that. And then also being clear about uncertainty and that that's being managed. So I think in those three domains, it's very important not to
Was it?
not to deny, but
Was
to
it?
speak to them very
I don't think it
clearly
was.
in the context of a daily briefing from, in this case, I can't imagine any other institution than WHO being the focal point.
Martin and Chris, and then I'll come down this line.
See, no, you got to set up WHO to be the focal point. That's important. Very, very, very important, because without the WHO, then they don't have the seeming authority. That's very, 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 very important. Very important to denote. Let's give me one second here. I wanted to check one thing out. Here it is. 4. You know what? Let's do this one. Let's check this out. This is the highlight reel. So I want to check out this one too.
Emergency Board is to provide recommendations to deal with a major global challenge.
So just so everybody understands, this is the same time, and this is the highlight reel.
Healthy-looking pigs, months, perhaps years ago. A new coronavirus spread silently within her.
And they predicted it was a coronavirus. Shut the fuck up! Are you what coincidence? I'm flabbergasted.
Herds. Gradually, farmers started getting sick. Infected people got a respiratory illness with symptoms ranging from mild flu-like signs to severe pneumonia.
No way.
The sickest required intensive care. Many died. Experts agree unless it is quickly controlled, it could lead to a severe pandemic, an outbreak that circles the globe and affects people everywhere.
But it wasn't.
The mission of the Pandemic Emergency Board is to provide recommendations to deal with the major global challenges arising in response to an unfolding pandemic. The board is comprised of highly experienced leaders from business, public health, and civil society.
We could be looking at double the number of cases in 1 week and 16 times as many in a month if we are not able to stop the spread. That would be on the order of 500,000 cases, and it would.
First of all, it's a room full of people. I'm sure there's scientists there to think that you are going to stop the spread. And this is one of the funniest. This was one of the funniest things, right? Because anybody that ever got on TV and told you that they were going to beat COVID or they were going to stop COVID, or like at one point in time, California was talking about zero COVID policy. You had to be stupid. It was a virus that had been around the world. You were never going to stop it. It had become endemic. Immediately, the very second it became a pandemic, it became endemic. But you think you're like Joe Biden's out there, like, we're going to beat COVID. Like, shut the fuck up. You are not going to beat nature. All right? It's not going to happen. People are going to still catch colds. People are still going to catch COVID. The very second it landed in a different country from its original one, it was over. It was an endemic virus. It's ridiculous that people ignore it. Ridiculous.
Would continue to rise exponentially. In 3 months, we could be approaching 10 million cases.
Oh, no, cases.
We're at the start of what's looking like it will be a severe pandemic. And there are problems emerging that can only be solved by global business and governments working together.
That sounds a little fascist-y, doesn't it? Fascism. It's like the governments and global businesses working together to rule the people. Imagine that. Like, what could go wrong? Global businesses and governments working together. What could go wrong? Really? How I'm sure that's going to only benefit the American people.
We have known about caps-like viruses in animals and people for decades, but have not been successful at developing a licensed vaccine. And sure, there are new technologies that...
Oh no! Are we really going to go into the whole new technology vaccine? Are we really doing this?
...may help, but it's going to be difficult. I am not optimistic about having a vaccine in time to be relevant during this pandemic.
So the policy crisis in question for this board in this meeting is this: how should governments, business, and international organizations allocate and distribute pandemic antivirals and medical supplies to the people who need them most?
What we've seen work very well in the HIV field is, in fact, procurement through the Global Fund. So having a centralized...
Yeah, claiming that anything worked very well during HIV, like, if you guys have never looked into that, just like keep an open mind and look into how Fauci, look at Fauci and HIV.
Mechanism, so financially able to procure on behalf of affected countries would be critical. I think the second thing is it's going to be very important that for the business sector, for manufacturers of antivirals, that we have clarity around what the need is and where the need is and who are making the decisions.
I think that given that the countries most affected are those that are low and middle income countries with unequal access to technology, to finances, the UN has a worldwide footprint, universally recognized and universal
Getting ready to bring in the UN.
membership.
A global stockpile would certainly help ensure more rational and strategic allocation, but the reality is that we don't have the logistics capability, even within the UN, to bring that together in one place and run it. So this is where I think
This is somebody from Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation talking about how they're going to take over the world, by the way.
collaboration between the international organizations like the World Health Organization and the private sector, which runs these supply chains for many purposes every day. Understand where the supplies are, make smart decisions about how to allocate them to the people who need them in the places that need them the most, and then work with the industry to move those supplies from where they are today to where they need to be.
Just to underscore the point that cooperation among supply chain providers or businesses that have huge supply chains can add a lot of efficiency to the whole process.
UPS.
The question is, can you, through this international mechanism, really promote commitments to doing this as quickly as possible and give people a sense that actually if they contribute more, that they will have a better chance of protecting their own populations and their country's security and health.
So to be completely clear, most of this production would already be committed in contracts.
Yes.
It is almost unheard of that people are producing product without having a forward commitment for the consumption of that product. So the first thing that needs to be done, because this is not something that countries currently control, and those countries are going to bring about emergency situations and co-opt an existing supply chain.
I think it's not likely, I agree, that countries are not going to buy a countermeasure to put into a global supply without retaining.
Oh, look! A representative of the CDC is there. Shocking, right?
A large portion of it for themselves.
Public health agencies have issued travel advisories, while some countries have banned travel from the worst affected areas. As a result, the travel sector is taking a huge hit. Travel bookings are down 45%, and many flights have been canceled. A ripple
By the way, that guy really did work for the CDC at one point in time.
effect is racing through the service sector. Governments that rely on travel and tourism as a large part of their economies are being hit particularly hard.
So they have predicted how this was going to happen, how this was going to work, right?
National leaders, businesses, and international organizations.
Like, they knew how bad it was going to be for economies. You would have thought that they would have made sure that before they wrecked it all, that the virus wasn't, in line with the seasonal flu as it was. Like, a crime against humanity has been committed. Everybody grasps that, right? They planned this shit. And then, in the face of overwhelming evidence that they were handling it the wrong way, they still forced the destruction of our country. Get there faster.
Balance the risk of worsening disease that would be caused by the continued movement of people around the world against the risks of profound economic consequence of travel and trade bans.
If there's some sense that there's a UN institution that can do all of this, then I worry we're suffering from a delusional disorder on the power of the UN. It's really important to get those industries and their trade associations and an efficient leadership established, which is decentralized, but has a collective responsibility and accountability. And that needs to be supported by the public leadership.
What is essential, what is non-essential travel, we have to clarify this. Otherwise, if we go down to 20% bookings over a long period,
Oh, look, we're talking about essential and non-essential already.
the company will run down. That's a fact.
There's a whole complex set of issues in a highly interdependent world on supply chains that are just in time. We need to think about how much flex there is in that just in time supply chain system and make sure it keeps running. I think it's going to take specificity.
Tell me that's not scary. Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation sitting next to Johns Hopkins University.
And it's going to take knowledge that only the private sector has. The UN can play an important coordinating facilitation role, but the companies know where those commodities are, where they move, how to move them. And that's where a type of public-private collaboration that we have not generally had in these crises needs to be put together pretty quickly.
Yeah, we need to get some fascism going on to help, squash these fucking people that are saying true shit. Because that's what it seems like to me.
We are not out of money yet. But the fact is we are trending in a dangerous direction and something needs to change.
So the policy question for this board now is how should financial resources be prioritized?
So they absolutely knew that it was going to destroy the economy. This is half the reason why they fucking did it, if you ask me, because they needed an excuse to get Trump out of there.
For nodes that we cannot allow to fail, what is your sense of priorities? We don't have money to pay for all of these urgent problems.
So at the moment, we want the funds, right? You need the money. So where's the money? So government kind of supplies our money. A lot of, private sectors, some are sitting here, you have some money, but now you need a really coordinated, centralized efforts.
Hotels will be experiencing,
Centralized.
crippling losses doing that. And we know that the hotel business in itself makes up 5% of the GDP.
Governments need to be willing to do things that are out of their historical perspective, or for the most part, it's really
man from the CDC,
a war footing that we need to be on.
We shouldn't underestimate the power of entrepreneurship. We need to escalate that, whether it's through the government's helping with tax breaks or subsidies of that nature to increase manufacturing of those types of products. It can happen quickly. A Marshall type plan, don't mean to say that exactly, but a Marshall plan that can go into effect can stimulate a change very quickly.
Countries are reacting in different ways as to how best to manage the overwhelming amounts of dis and misinformation circulating over the internet.
Heard this one?
That try to shut things down in terms of information.
65 million people died in the first 18 months of the pandemic, and Event 201 was catastrophic.
But we also need
epilogue.
to actually think about a technological answer to this.
The outcome of the CAPS pandemic in Event 201 was catastrophic. 65 million people died in the first 18 months. The outbreak was small at first and initially seemed controllable, but then it started spreading in densely crowded.
By the way, I'm just letting everybody know, and I really mean this. Like, I think I need to say this for the record, just so people grasp where I'm coming from and stuff like that. And I'm not going to speak for Mark, but him and I talk fairly regularly. So, I mean, and by the way, he's just traveling. He's still part of Evening Rants. But I can say this from the bottom of my heart. If the COVID pandemic would have been as deadly as they even predicted, 2.4 million people dead by April, or as dangerous as this woman just said, 65 million people dead across the globe in 18 months. Even if it would have been that dangerous, the United States government has no constitutional authority to tell businesses to close, tell you can't travel, tell you need to stay in your home, tell you need to take a vaccine. They have no constitutional authority to tell businesses that they can't accept you if you are unvaccinated. They had no constitutional authority to do any of that shit. At all. They definitely didn't have the constitutional authority to censor, pay social media companies taxpayer dollars to censor taxpayers. Like the very second we found out that happened, like the Twitter files came out, like that the federal government, the Biden administration paid Twitter millions of dollars of taxpayer money to silence taxpayers. We should have watered the tree of liberty. Everybody grasps that, right? That's treason. Like, that is absolute treason. They used taxpayer funds to steal taxpayers' First Amendment rights away. I don't give a shit if somebody's 100% wrong. Like, shit, we had the Patriotic Misfit on here the other night, and he sounded like a fucking crazy person, but he's allowed to say shit. The government has no authority to do that. It could have been 10 times that deadly shit. We could get a virus that has a 10% kill rate, that 33 million Americans could die in a year. Do you know what? Sucks being you motherfuckers. I'll take my chances. But you're not going to take my freedom away from me. We are a constitutional republic. We are founded on individual liberty. You are not going to say, well, for the greater good or the group speak that you should be in. Never again. Never fucking again. I'm going to die a free motherfucker. I guarantee that shit.
crowded and impoverished neighborhoods of megacities. From that point on, the spread of the disease was explosive. Within 6 months, cases were occurring in nearly every country. The global economy was in a free fall. The GDP down 11%. Stock markets around the world plummeted between 20 and 40% and headed into a downward cycle of fear and low expectation. Businesses were not borrowing, banks were not lending. Everyone was just hoping to hunker down and weather the storm. Economists say the economic turmoil caused by such a pandemic will last for years, perhaps a decade. The societal impacts, the loss of faith in government, the distrust of news, and the breakdown of social cohesion could last even longer. We have to ask, did this need to be so bad? Are there things we could have done in the 5 to 10 years leading up to the pandemic that would have lessened the catastrophic consequences? We believe the answer is yes. So are we as a global community now finally ready to do the
Fuck your global community. Saying we as a like, it's easy to call it a global community when when you want to be partnered with the strongest nation in the world. That's another thing, a whole other topic that we'll get into here in a little bit.
hard work needed to prepare for the next pandemic?
You know how we need to prepare for the next pandemic? And I really mean this. How you prepare for the next pandemic? We make it so it's unacceptable to be fat in America. We make it so it's unacceptable to literally just be a fat slob-like motherfucker that eats ultra-processed food every day. You want to prepare for the next pandemic? Make sure that the people are actually healthy. Make sure it's unacceptable socially. Make sure we stop subsidizing poor life decisions. It is robbery for people to pay more in health insurance to subsidize the poor lifestyle choices of others. Like, there are people that barely go to the doctor that pay just as much as somebody who weighs 500 fucking pounds eating 45 fucking donuts. Like, there's no way that they took this seriously because, very frankly, they knew super early during the COVID pandemic that being morbidly obese was the number one risk factor next to age. They knew it. Not one public health official told people to lose weight. Not one. As a matter of fact, we closed gyms and kept the bars open, basically. We closed gyms and made it so people could DoorDash fast food and booze to their houses. Like, literally, that's what we fucking did. Not in no way can you tell me that they took it seriously. There is overwhelming physical evidence from not just COVID, but every other upper respiratory virus in the history of fucking forever that being fat makes it harder on you. We've known this. If you want to prepare for the next pandemic, make sure we don't have any more fucking fat people, because that's the problem. We're going to have old people. There's no way we can avoid having old people. However, we can have healthier old people, because if you don't have fat younger people, they don't become unhealthy older people just sustained by literally 25 medications and somebody paid to wipe their ass. So if we really cared about preventing the next pandemic, there would be a national call to not be fat as fuck no more. But it's not realistic. There's so many ways that you can tell that they did not take this seriously at all. Of course, what we saw in Project 201 there was how they were talking about how the spread. I'll give you a perfect example. And I would love for any of you to provide other ones that made you realize that it's absolute complete bullshit. Now, by the time this happened, I already realized that it was complete bullshit, all of it, just so everybody knows. I'd already called it, and I had already been canceled for it. But by the time they were sending college kids home, I had already been canceled. But that's some of the dumbest motherfucking shit I've ever goddamn fucking heard in my goddamn life if you're trying to avoid the spread of a pathogen. You're going to take college students who are from all over the country, who then travel, fly, drive, whatever, to a centralized location, to then party and crawl all over other college students from all over the country and world, who then went on spring break to meet up with other people from other colleges from all across the world and crawl all over them and party with them, to go back to their colleges and exchange what they picked up while they were away, to crawl all over each other and and party with each other again. And then for the population group, because under 20 had almost no danger of COVID, as is goddamn nearly always with upper respiratory viruses, they had almost no problem. We knew very clearly from the data in Italy and from China that it was elderly people and fat people. And people that were younger almost had no issue with it at all. And it's only logical that it would happen that way because that's most viruses, as I've said before. But these people who were at almost no risk at all, who were at a place that they lived at already, instead of having us shelter them in place for the 2 weeks to slow the spread, they sent them home. They flew these children who had been exposed to possibly millions of contact exposures from around the world. They sent these people home to their fat middle-aged parents and their elderly grandparents. Dispersed them across the country instead of sheltering in place for what it would have been 2 weeks. It's almost like they planned on it being longer than 2 weeks from the very beginning. There's so many things I can bring up. And the thing is, you can check my feed, the MFing COO. You can check my feed. I still get people every single day trying to pretend that COVID was some world-killing virus when there is a study on the WHO bulletin website that shows that the infection fatality rate overall was 0.23, in line with the seasonal flu. And that is with counting almost every single death as COVID. If you died in a car accident, but you tested positive for COVID, that's a COVID death. If you had stage 4 cancer and a day before you died, you tested positive for COVID, that's a COVID death. That's not a joke. That is what really happened. That is the guidance they were given by our government, by our CDC. That's the government they were given. So it inflates the numbers by at least 25%, but we could possibly say even 50 because there's a huge difference of with and of, and a lot of the estimations are 50% was with, not of. So if we take that down, now it's an infection fatality rate of 0.025 for people under the age of 70 and 0.115 for people overall. In other words, it's a fucking flu. And we closed the world and destroyed it knowing, and I mean knowing, that it was going to hurt the economy, hurt the fabric of society, basically, be horrible for people's mental health, make sure, destroy the development of a whole entire generation of children. They knew all this was going to happen. They're predictable outcomes. And they did it anyway because they planned on doing it, even though the virus that they did it for was not the world killer that they advertised it to be. And they knew the whole time that it wasn't that way. The whole time. If you don't think that this was done to you, if you think this still happened and this wasn't done to you, you need to get there faster. You are too trusting in a government that will lie to you at every fucking chance it gets. Get there faster. So we'll go to the comments a little bit. 100% bio warfare. Absolutely it was. 100%. 100%. Worked as an ICU nurse and it was forked up. I hear that from so many people. What's even better is I was a essential worker and praised for it. And then they kicked you out, right, when you wouldn't take it? Yep. That's what I assume always. But the truth is nothing but an inconvenience to them. That's very true. Very, 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 very true. All right, folks, this has been Evening Rants. My name is Alan Roberts. I'm going to let everybody go. I hope you all have a great night. Oh, hang on. People got arrested for going to the beach when we kept McDonald's open. That's another thing. Like, what about the craziest things that happen? Like the crazy, insane, complete bullshit things that happen. Like people getting arrested on the beach by themselves. People get arrested jogging outside. Like the arrows on the grocery in the grocery store because virus is no direction. You fucking dumb fucks. You let yourselves look stupid. So many of you. The thing with our society, with American society right now, is so many people should feel so very stupid, but they're too fucking stupid to feel stupid. And as soon as they were mandating vacation, I know. Yep. The hospital protocol killed people. It's a disgrace. Oh, it absolutely killed people. Ventilators, forced air ventilation on inflamed full lungs. Like, who fucking thought of that? And it's even admitted. It's openly admitted. In case you motherfuckers don't know this, you can check this out too. It's openly admitted that a lot of the times they would intubate a person because they were worried about the staff. It wasn't for the safety of the patient. It was for the safety of the staff, so the staff didn't catch the evil virus. So a lot of people died on ventilators because the staff was afraid, not because they thought it would help. And that's a true story. That's medical like what we experienced should have literally dismantled the healthcare industry. They should not be trusted. Like you either like the people that spoke up and said, "Hey, this is wrong," trust them. But anybody that tried to tell you that COVID was a world-killing virus lied to you. Anybody that tried to tell you that masks work lied to you. Anybody that tried to tell you that lockdowns will be worth it lied to you. Anybody that ever said zero COVID or do your part or you wear a mask to protect other people lied to you. I don't care if they're an MD. I don't care if they're a PhD. They couldn't stand up to debate over a 3-layer why. They can't answer a question like, they make a statement. Why does that happen? They'll make a statement. Well, why does that happen? They have no answer after that. Because the truth is, the actual data, when you look at it in its entirety, with how they overcounted numbers, with how they literally made it so hospitals would make more money if it was a COVID diagnosis, how they ventilated people to death, how they suppressed ivermectin, one of the safest medications out there. It's been literally approved by the FDA for decades, used billions of times, won a Nobel Peace Prize for its use in humans, and it was almost made illegal to even have it because it worked. Like everybody, you got to realize that by now, because they thought it worked. And if there is a secondary cure, if there is a cure from a drug that already exists, there's no basis for an emergency use authorization. So if they don't have an emergency use authorization, there's no vaccine, even though we had other possibilities. They had to squash those to get to the vaccine. And nobody can tell me that that doesn't make it look like that was done on purpose. The only people I know that passed were obese in a motorcycle accident and forced on dangerous meds and a ventilator. Oh, the ventilator thing. Jeez, I'm sorry. They definitely overcounted majorly. Remember that they took ivermectin away. People were actually getting better. Yep, absolutely. So, all right, folks, thank you for tuning in. I might do another part to this series because I think it's very important that we don't let this slide into the ether. They do a lot. The mainstream media, our government, they do a lot of making sure that we're jumping from topic to topic to topic. So we never get answers for any of the previous topics. But the COVID-19 pandemic was completely mismanaged. And everybody involved should have to answer to it and be questioned about it. Everybody. And we will not be a free country until that happens. There is no moving forward. Have a good day. God damn.
Are you fit and fat? I was fit and fat. In fact, at the most athletic of my life, I was playing football, I was running fast, I was doing it all. I was fat. And we all know that being fat is not healthy, no matter how fit you might be. Now, I had to learn a lot of things to get rid of that fat, but I also wanted to keep it fit. And one thing is, I need to make sure I slept good. I need to make sure I controlled my appetite. I need to make sure I controlled my blood sugar. At the Ambrosia Collective, we've actually come out with a stack of products called the Holy Trinity Stack. And the Holy Trinity Stack has 3 things to help you do that. Now, number 1 is you need energy and motivation to go to the gym, to get it done, to burn those extra calories. For that, we have Ember. Also, you need to control your blood sugar and make sure your body utilizes the nutrients you eat to help your body burn more fat and build more muscle. For that, we have Alchemy NCT. And the final piece, and this is probably my favorite piece, is No Morbidity. No Morbidity not only helps to control your appetite, but also helps to control your stress. And it even helps you burn more calories while you sleep. So if you're looking to get all the traits that I got, to go from being a 300-pound monster to being what I am now, which is lean and in the best shape of my life, the Holy Trinity Stack is for you.